Total Serpent Survival here today to talk about the Sam Wilson Safe System 1, which you can find at gearconvoy.com. But before we get to that point, let's talk about the divisive topic, that is the hollow-handled knife. Can a hollow handle be a viable survival tool option? Let's find out. My interest in hollow-handled knives originated from sitting down with my dad and watching classics like First Blood. And I was thinking about the time First Blood came out, 1982. Actually using a classic 1982 Ford F-150 as a wind block here. But talking about First Blood Part 2, Commando, Predator, and then hearing stories of the knives from his childhood. And his interest stemmed from hearing about the Randall Model 18 from my late grandfather while he served in Vietnam. And if you haven't been living under a rock, you either lived or have heard about the hollow handle craze of the 1980s. It brought a lot of iconic knives, have some sitting out here on the table. I already talked about the Randall Model 18. I'll talk about this one in a minute. Robert Parrish survival knife, the infamous Buck 184 Buckmaster. And then these two are inspired by the First Blood knife and then the First Blood Part 2 Mission knife. And a lot of makers jumped on this trend, so there were a lot of good tools made and a lot of junk knives produced. So my dad would actually probably argue that some of these junk knives with a few modifications could be functional. This one served him well during his childhood since he didn't have access to these other blades. You can see some of the modifications there. But moving on from those junk knives, knives like this Robert Parrish here were put through brutal testing that would make the common concrete batoning bushcrafter cringe. And I just want to go ahead and add this in here since I was talking about the testing of the Robert Parrish. This is a gung-ho special from around 1986. Here's some of those Robert Parrish knives being tested. So you're probably wondering, why the heck did I talk about all that? Well, I wanted to provide a historical context for those who might not have the background on those knives that I do. And I wanted to show some of the predecessors from the 1980s to Sam's modern line of hollow-handled knives. So moving on from there, that brings us back to our first question. How can a hollow-handled knife be a viable survival tool option? Well, let's take a look at it from the perspective of the day hiker. The day hiker, more than likely, is going to have minimalist gear. So a water bottle, preferably single-walled so they can at least boil water, sandals, and hopefully a knife. Let's bring this up as an example because we've all been there. We said, yeah, we're just going to hike up there. Well, one thing leads to another, and you don't have the gear you needed. And that causes stress. Well, stressors lead to poor outcomes. And looking at an example of those poor outcomes, if you look at the mortality data of hikers, TBIs are really common. So TBI is a traumatic brain injury, and most of those come from falls. But I'm going to specifically be talking about hypothermia just because it's something that I've always thought about, especially here in the Appalachians, because that going up to that hill can lead to an overnight stay. Now here in the Appalachians, if you're having to stay overnight, you're going to get wet, you're going to get cold. And that's just for all seasons of the year. But with hypothermia, getting wet and cold, those two factors lead to it. And hypothermia, at least in the early stages, leads to poor decision making, loss of dexterity, and if you get to that late stage, then you're just going to be thinking, I'm warm and I want to go to sleep. Well, you're probably not waking up. So when I'm putting together a kit, I have two things in mind: hypothermia and the rule of threes. So 3 minutes without air, 3 hours without shelter, 3 days without water, and 3 weeks without food. So thinking about that, I always put a correlation with those two things, so hypothermia and the rule of threes. Well, if you're hypothermic, I already talked about poor decision making, loss of dexterity. Well, you're probably not going to want to go out and get water, food, or put up a shelter. So how are we going to prevent hypothermia? Well, in your hollow handle, you have that last stitch kit. And if you've been to any of my classes, you know I put a significant emphasis on fire making. It's very critical. And at primitive fire specifically, it looks really easy in a controlled environment. But even if you're the most fit person on earth and the most conditioned for, I'll just say, doing a hand drill or a bow drill, it's going to be a pain going and harvesting your own materials. Like I said, here in the Appalachians, everything's going to be wet. So that's going to add another harsh factor to that. But you want to prevent having to do that. You're not going to want to put yourself in that situation, because it's not only trying to put an ember together. I mean, that's the end. You're going to have to go find the materials. You could fall in that process and injure yourself. You could cut yourself either batoning the board out or making something like a V-notch. So you just don't want to put yourself in that situation. We'll just leave it at that. So I put a lot of fire making material in my kit, and I always look at it from the perspective of a primary, secondary, and tertiary layout. So there's a backup upon backup. So finally, let's get to our kits. I know we said we're going to take a look at some kits, but I'm going to talk about the knife first. I've had this SS1 for a little bit over a year. Put it through extensive testing. It's done exceptionally well. I'll start at the tip and talk about some of the features that make this knife so functional. So with the tip, you can obviously pierce stuff with it. It's very sharp, but I've used it a lot doing friction, making friction fireboards. So a lot of drilling and a lot of cutting. Then I've also used it for digging walnuts out. It's done very well. It's a very strong tip. Spine is sharpened. It's 90 degrees. You can use that to make fine materials to ignite, and you can scrape a ferro rod with it as well. Sam did a great job on the edge geometry on this knife as well. It does good with fine tasks and performs well processing wood. So no problems there. And his heat treat of this CPM 154 has led to great edge retention. That brings us to the guard. This has an asymmetrical guard, and that is for indexing. And you can find it in low light environments or nighttime. Just make sure which side your edge is on. Then here at the top, it's very comfortable. If you want to put your thumb over there, I don't really agree with that technique, but if you want to, you can. You need your thumb. It might strain it, but you do what you want to do. And one of the reasons it's comfortable is because Sam takes the time to radius these guards. So you have no problem with it cutting into your hands or causing hot spots. Something else that just makes this knife really comfortable to me is the way this handle is. The wrap's very comfortable. It's wide and it's round. I've grown up using farm tools, so this just fits into my hand perfectly. And I'll wear an extra large glove, so that'll give you an idea of how long this handle is. You can find all the specs on at gearconvoy.com. I was talking about the wrap. That's quite a bit of cord you can use for fishing or shelter building, whatever you need it for. It's there if you want to remove it. But I can tell you, because Sam mills a retaining ring, that the cord is just not going to come off unless you want it to. And finally, we're at the pommel. This is a strong pommel design, I do have to say. I've beat through ice, knocked tent pegs in. I mean, you name it. I've done a lot with this knife in a year. But one failure I did have was a compass. And I was talking about Sam always trying to get the best products he can put together for a configuration. And this is a very fine and precise compass. And I assume all those impacts just finally led to it failing. So another thing about Sam, if you have a problem, you just let him know. He sent this from the 4,200 foot elevation mountains of Oregon in about 2 days. So props to him on that. Now, getting into the kit and the handle. I've already rattled on about how I have my kit set up, so I'll finally show it to you. It's good to have some kind of currency. $20 is $20. Have a small flashlight. I've actually tested this one. It's lasted well over 12 hours. Pretty bright. You can use it for signaling or just to see at night. I have multiple types of matches. These are strike anywhere, and then these are stormproof. I have a ferro rod, a couple of quick tender tabs, and Sam actually has some materials for kits and kits you can find on his website. So I have one of his glow sticks in there. Those just come in handy, and that serves as a backup for the light. So you have a lot of capability with a small kit like that. Hopefully, as a day hiker, you've done your due diligence and let people know where you're going and giving them an estimate of how long you're going to be gone. So this kit can help you until search and rescue comes and finds you, and it can help you make it out alive. So there's the kit and the handle. Moving on to the sheath now. I ranger banded a wazoo whistle onto the back of my sheath. Let's get out of here. You can also burn that ranger band or burn the money if you have to. And I like this basic sheath just because it's minimalist and streamlined. There's a lot of rhodo, briars. I mean, there's so much stuff to get caught on here. So the less snag points you have, the better. And Sam also makes sure the sheath quality matches the quality of the knife. Now, what I like so much about the Techline series is that there's so much variability. There's so many configurations you can make with finish and sheath options. So this one right here is just satin finish with the OD green gun coat on the guard and the handle. And this is my buddy's configuration right here. I'll show the knife first, then I'll get into the beast of a sheath. So this is a safe prototype. You can see where it says prototype. It's got a commando finish. Pretty sure that's one of Sam's favorite gun coat finishes he has. So my buddy actually took this to Alaska and did a bunch of testing with it. There's the knife. Now, this is the Cadillac sheath. This is the premium of the premium out of these configurations. Now, this has a pouch on the front with a kit. I think my buddy not only has some of Sam's stuff in here, but modified it himself. But this has one feature that I do wish mine had, and that's a bonus knife. This is a PSK. You've probably seen me using mine that's with my M8 setup. It's actually custom made by Sam. For such a small knife, this has a lot of capability, and you can match your finish with your knife. So this is commando finished as well. So it's a heck of a package, and with everything that I've said, I know it's been a little bit long. I just wanted to help viewers grasp why a hollow handle might be a viable survival tool option. So stand by for some testing footage and go check out gearconvoy.com. Thanks for watching.